Australia's economy looks solid on the surface. Low unemployment, steady population growth, and decades without a technical recession. But strip away the national averages, and something troubling appears underneath. Not every Australian city is built the same way. Some are balanced, diversified, and resilient. Others stand on one leg, completely dependent on a single industry, a single export market, or a single boom that could end tomorrow. When recession hits, these places will not just struggle, they will collapse first. These are 12 Australian cities sitting on an economic knife's edge. Number 12. Gladstone. Sitting on the central Queensland coast, Gladstone transformed almost overnight when 3 massive liquefied natural gas plants were built on Curtis Island between 2011 and 2016. During the construction boom, the population surged, house prices doubled, and the local economy was absolutely flying. Then construction ended. Workers packed up and left. Property values crashed by more than 30% in some suburbs. Restaurants closed. Rental vacancies skyrocketed. Today, Gladstone still leans heavily on those LNG export terminals and aluminium smelting. If global gas prices drop or China reduces its energy imports, this city has almost no economic backup plan. It has happened before, and it will happen again. Number 11. Whyalla. This South Australian city has been a one-company town for over a century. The Whyalla Steelworks has defined this place since the early 1900s, employing thousands and shaping every business in the region around its output. The problem is obvious. When that single employer wobbles, the entire city wobbles with it. Whyalla went through exactly this during the collapse of Arium in 2016, when the steelworks operator entered administration and the town's future hung by a thread. A rescue deal saved the plant, but the underlying vulnerability has not changed. Whyalla's economy still revolves around steel. One bad quarter, one restructure, and the whole house of cards comes down again. Number 10. Karratha. Deep in Western Australia's Pilbara region, Karratha exists because of iron ore. The mines surrounding this remote outpost generate staggering wealth. Workers earn 6-figure salaries. The local economy booms when commodity prices are high. But the Pilbara has already shown what happens when prices fall. Between 2012 and 2017, housing values in parts of the East Pilbara crashed by 66%. A median home that was worth over $700,000 fell to less than $240,000. Entire streets sat empty. Businesses shut their doors. Karratha is firmly back in a growth phase right now. But with iron ore prices tied directly to Chinese demand, and China's property sector still struggling, this city carries enormous downside risk in any global downturn. Number 9. Mount Isa. Sitting in the far northwest of Queensland, Mount Isa is one of Australia's most isolated cities. It was built around copper, zinc, and lead mining, and that has not changed in 70 years. The challenge for Mount Isa is that its major mines have finite lifespans. Glencore's operations in the region have already seen production scaled back, and the city's young people are leaving for coastal centres with more opportunity. The population has been steadily declining. When mining contracts further, there is no tourism drawcard, no university campus, and no alternative employer large enough to absorb the shock. Number 8. Rockhampton. Known as the beef capital of Australia, Rockhampton sits on the Fitzroy River in central Queensland and depends overwhelmingly on the cattle industry. The sale yards here process thousands of head of livestock every week, and beef processing plants are among the region's biggest employers. That sounds stable until you realise how exposed Australia's beef exports are to a single market. China buys a massive share of Australian beef, and when trade tensions flare, as they did during the diplomatic freeze in 2020, regions like Rockhampton feel it immediately. Add in the growing pressure on the cattle industry from drought cycles that are becoming more frequent and more severe, and this city carries more risk than its quiet country image suggests. Number 7. Launceston. Tasmania's second city has struggled with a slow bleed of manufacturing jobs for decades. The paper mills, textile factories, and food processing plants that once sustained the city have either closed or dramatically downsized. Launceston has tried to pivot toward tourism and education, but young unemployment has consistently tracked above the national average. Youth unemployment in northern Tasmania remains stubbornly high, and the median household income sits well below the Australian average. In a recession, cities that are already struggling tend to fall hardest, because they have the least capacity to absorb the blow. Number 6. Townsville. North Queensland's largest city has a more diverse economy than some places on this list, but it carries two significant vulnerabilities. First, Townsville is heavily dependent on defence spending. The Laverack Barracks and the Royal Australian Air Force Base in Townsville are massive employers. Government defence budgets can be cut or redirected, and when they are, garrison towns feel the impact fast. Second, Townsville has an insurance crisis. After repeated cyclone damage and major flooding events, home insurance premiums in parts of the city have become some of the highest in the country. Some residents pay over $5,000 a year just for basic cover. That drains household spending power and makes the local housing market fragile in ways that do not show up in the usual economic data. Number 5. Cairns. This tropical city at the doorstep of the Great Barrier Reef is one of Australia's premier tourism destinations. That is precisely the problem. Tourism is one of the most recession-sensitive industries on the planet. When household budgets tighten, holidays are the first thing people cut. Cairns learnt this during the pandemic, when international visitor numbers dropped to almost zero, and the city's hospitality sector was devastated overnight. Even now, Cairns remains overwhelmingly dependent on visitors from Asia, particularly China and Japan. A slowdown in either economy, a disruption to flights, or a coral bleaching event that damages the reef's reputation could all send shockwaves through the city's bottom line. There is very little heavy industry or government infrastructure to fall back on. If you are finding this interesting, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss our deep dives into the places and patterns shaping Australia's future. Number 4. Mackay. Sitting on the Queensland coast, surrounded by sugarcane fields, Mackay is the gateway to the Bowen Basin, one of the largest coal mining regions in the world. The mining service industry here is enormous. Trucks, equipment, fly-in, fly-out workers, logistics companies. It all flows through Mackay. But coal is facing an existential challenge. Global energy transition policies, declining thermal coal demand from key markets, and pressure from investors moving away from fossil fuels are all threatening the long-term viability of the industry that keeps this city alive. Australia has already flagged the closure of roughly 24 coal mines by 2030. Mackay's fortunes are directly tied to how that transition unfolds. Number 3. Darwin. Australia's northernmost capital city has the smallest economy of any state or territory capital. It relies on a combination of defence, resources, and government services, all of which are vulnerable to policy shifts and commodity cycles. The city boomed during the Inpex gas project construction phase, but when that work finished, Darwin suffered a sharp economic hangover. Property prices dropped, businesses closed, the population actually shrank for several consecutive years. Darwin also sits at the front line of trade tensions with Asia. As Australia's closest major city to Southeast Asian markets, disruptions in that trade corridor hit Darwin's port and logistics operations first. And with such a small population base, around 140,000 people, there is simply not enough economic diversity to cushion a significant downturn. Number 2. Gold Coast. It might seem surprising to see the Gold Coast on this list. After all, it's one of Australia's fastest growing cities, a magnet for interstate migration, and a tourism powerhouse. But the Gold Coast's growth hides a dangerous vulnerability. Property prices have surged dramatically, driven by speculative investment and a pandemic-era migration boom from Sydney and Melbourne. When property markets correct, cities that grew the fastest tend to fall the furthest. On top of that, the Gold Coast's economy still leans heavily on tourism and hospitality, industries that offer lower wages and less job security than mining or professional services. The city has limited government infrastructure, no major university hospital complex, and a seasonal employment pattern that leaves thousands of workers exposed during quiet months. In a true recession, the Gold Coast's shiny surface could crack faster than anyone expects. Number 1. Adelaide. South Australia's capital has been quietly struggling with a structural problem for over a decade. When Holden closed its Elizabeth plant in 2017, Adelaide lost its last car manufacturer, and the end of an era for Australian automotive manufacturing hit this city harder than anywhere else. Since then, Adelaide has tried to reinvent itself around defence contracts, space technology, and renewable energy. There is genuine progress happening, but the transition is still incomplete. Manufacturing employment has fallen dramatically, and many of the new industries have not yet scaled to fill the gap. Adelaide also has one of the weakest productivity growth rates among Australian capital cities, and its economy is more reliant on government spending than Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane. When federal budgets tighten in a downturn, cities that depend on government contracts and public sector employment feel the pinch first. The pattern across all 12 of these places is the same: dependence on a single industry, a single export market, or a single boom cycle. Australia's national economy might avoid a technical recession, but for these cities, the downturn is already baked into their foundations. The question is not whether they will struggle, it is how badly and how soon. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden fragility in Australia's regional economies, check out the video on screen now for more on the places and forces reshaping this country. We will see you in the next one.